Resumed its sitting. Call now on the Minister, Honourable Minister of Commerce.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Speaker, I rise to add my contribution to the throne speech, budget appropriation, and the appropriation bill 2020-2021. Mr. Speaker, I had the privilege and honor during the last budget debate in 2017 to address this honorable House and the people that we serve for the very first time as a minister responsible for commerce, planning, and infrastructure. Mr. Speaker, this year my privilege and honor are rooted in the fact that I am a member of the National Unity Government that is ensuring careful management of the economy, investing and improving in infrastructure across these three islands, supporting small and micro businesses to succeed, and ensuring that Caymanians have increased access to training and employment opportunities and a high standard of living, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, we are about impacting the lives of each and every Caymanian in a very meaningful and positive way. The Ministry of Commerce, Planning and Infrastructure, under my watch, Mr. Speaker, along with the dedicated members of staff, will continue under this government to create an environment for individuals and businesses to strive so as to strengthen the economy and enhance the lives of those who live in these islands. Mr. Speaker, the programs and policies which fall under this ministry form a cornerstone of government's priorities over the next 2 budget years. Our National Unity Government will continue the major projects begun in the last budget cycle, and I'm pleased that some of the ministry's priorities are again amongst those on which government will focus in the 2020-2021 budget cycle. Mr. Speaker, please permit me to begin my contribution with a vote of gratitude to His Excellency the Governor for his throne speech to this honorable House. Congratulate him on a productive first year in office and commend him for embracing and celebrating all that our islands have to offer. Mr. Speaker, I fully endorse the sentiments made by the Honorable Premier to His Excellency in his budget policy statement. That is, that his professionalism and integrity will help to guide our nation in good times and in challenging times. I also want to thank His Excellency for his acknowledgement of our Public Works Department's apprenticeship program, Mr. Speaker, which we plan to double in size and in scope in the years ahead. Mr. Speaker, it is truly a program of high standard and one that we can all celebrate as a country. Mr. Speaker, the demand from the private sector for our graduates speaks to the quality of our apprentice cohorts and the level of training and development programs which the ministry, through the Public Works Department, have provided for them. In their statements to the House, both the Honorable Premier and the Honorable Minister of Finance and Economic Development listed a number of priorities for the government over the next 2 years. Mr. Speaker, some of these initiatives, led by the ministry, will improve the quality of life for all in the Cayman Islands. These include, but not limited to, investment and improvements in road infrastructure and traffic management systems, reduced fees in vehicle licensing due to reductions for mobility scooters and wheelchairs, upgrades of the facilities at the Department of Vehicle and Equipment Services, improved improvements in information technology to enhance cybersecurity and to expand our e-government offerings. Increased support, including advice and training to small and micro businesses. And continued duty concessions on trade and business license fees for new licensees. And Mr. Speaker, improvements in training and development under the Public Works Department's apprenticeship program. In all of these areas, Mr. Speaker, sustainability will be crucial. As a government, we have a responsibility not just to the people of the Cayman Islands today, but we must also ensure we have the right policies in place to serve the next generation. I'm certain, Mr. Speaker, that this is a legacy upon which the true success of our national unity government will be judged. Mr. Speaker, I wish to commend the Honorable Minister of Finance and Development for highlighting the robustness, vibrancy, and dynamisms of our economy. We are enjoying the fruits of strong economic and social growth, building upon a sturdy foundation provided by this government, of which I am a proud representative. Mr. Speaker, in addition, we should applaud and thank all those civil servants who have worked hard so diligently to ensure that the Cayman Islands government remains in a strong financial position. I am optimistic, Mr. Speaker, when I look to the future for these beloved islands and for the people who are privileged, as I am, to call them our home. Mr. Speaker, I believe we are already reaping the benefits of the move to this 2-year budget cycle. I firmly believe that this change has already significantly improved the efficiency and productivity of our public service. It is truly remarkable that this government has ensured that so many vital projects and initiatives have been moved forward while not seeking to implement new fees or taxes and no new borrowings for the 2020-2021 budget period. Mr. Speaker, I am certain that the members of this honorable House know how important collaboration is in ensuring that we achieve our strategic outcomes. I have the distinct honor, Mr. Speaker, of working with a team of dedicated civil servants who comprise the staff of the Ministry of Commerce, Planning, and Infrastructure. I am proud of their work in delivering many of the far-reaching strategic priorities that were set at the start of my term in office. Mr. Speaker, just to name a few, these include the improved access to advice and support to entrepreneurs wanting to grow and start small businesses, removal of unnecessary regulations and bureaucracy that hindered businesses, particularly those in the small business sector, continuation of the work under Plan Cayman that will facilitate the National Development Plan, infrastructure improvements that support future economic growth, working with the private sector to increase opportunities for work-based training programs for young Caymanians, including the apprenticeships. And finally, Mr. Speaker, implementation of the national energy policy to increase energy from renewable sources. And among other things, Mr. Speaker, continuation of the e-government program to extend access to public services, improve the quality of customer service, and increase efficiency so we can positively impact the lives of each and every Caymanian. My ministry will continue to deliver significant initiatives in order to meet the broad strategic outcomes set out by this government. Mr. Speaker, I will now present before you and members of this honorable House our goals under this budget submission. Let me begin, Mr. Speaker, with the Department of Vehicle and Driver's License, DVDL, which will contribute to government's strategic aims of ensuring stable, effective, and accountable government, as well as reducing crime and the fear of crime. As members may be aware, The department continues to experience an increasing number of customers in line with the island's growth in population. Mr. Speaker, in 2018, that office dealt with 67,113 transactions. There were 21,996 transactions recorded in the first quarter of 2019. Mr. Speaker, we are anticipating some 90,000 transactions for this year. This represents a 30% increase over the previous year. Accommodating all persons who need to utilize the DVDL's services and delivering a world-class customer experience are vital priorities for the department. Therefore, Mr. Speaker, for the 2021 budget year, the DVDL expansion and further renovations of the Crew Road location will be a priority area for the department. Similarly, Mr. Speaker, the West Bay Satellite Office has outgrown the space it has occupied since October 1997. The department has insufficient parking for staff and customers, with a maximum capacity of only 12 customers per an hour. West Bay, Mr. Speaker, has the same problems with overcrowding as the DVDL's Crew Road location. In 2018, Mr. Speaker, the West Bay office dealt with some 28,711 transactions. The office is on track to surpass those numbers as well this year. Mr. Speaker, to address these challenges, DVDL is in the process of identifying suitable new locations in West Bay with a view to purchase. This will mean improved customer service to meet growing demands. In addition, Mr. Speaker, the new location in West Bay will include provisions for vehicle inspections on site. It must be noted that while plans are in place to improve physical space for customers, the DVDL will continue to encourage clients to utilize our online services, which are efficient, secure, and are available 24 hours a day, 7 days per week. Mr. Speaker, DVDL is well into implementation of the new electronic vehicle registration, or the EVR, with the installation of the gantry system. The system, Mr. Speaker, which holds a radio frequency identification antenna, will allow the department to continue to improve on law enforcement capabilities and better assist in the monitoring, revenue collection for unlicensed vehicles. Mr. Speaker, the system is presently set up and active, and the National Roads Authority is continuing to manage installations at key locations across Grand Cayman. While there are some technical challenges, we are making steady progress to have gantries island-wide throughout 2020, Mr. Speaker. Furthermore, the police are in possession of the first model of the mobile handheld readers. In an effort to address concerns by the police regarding the use of these devices, we are now in the process of supplying updated models to them as well. May I mention, Mr. Speaker, that the replanting exercise was slowed as a result of the influx of new vehicles. Replating exercise was slowed as a result of the influx of new vehicles into the islands, which resulted in new registrations. DVDL has received 7,000 plates to resume the efforts and will embark on an ambitious exercise to have replating completed by the end of the first quarter 2020. Mr. Speaker, in order to improve security and meet the international obligations under the Geneva Convention on Road Traffic, the department will bring in a new interface of the touchscreen EVR David systems for drive-in examinations. This will further enhance the integrity of the systems. It also marks an important milestone, Mr. Speaker, for improving the DVDL customer service experience. Persons will now be able to book both written and practical road tests online. I know members of this honorable House, as well as the public, will appreciate the exciting improvements brought by the DVDL's online system. Also in the works, Mr. Speaker, is the development and upgrade of existing computer software for both vehicle and driver's licenses. As a result of these upgrades, Mr. Speaker, the department will benefit from enhanced system security as well as improved verification of foreign driver's licenses. It must be pointed out, Mr. Speaker, that earlier this month, the DVDL ended its 6-month amnesty, which provided a waiver of vehicle license fees for persons who accrued a backlog. Mr. Speaker, over 4,600 relicensed their vehicles during this amnesty, and an additional 2,500 suspended their vehicles properly so that they could be repaired, and a further 823 vehicles were terminated. Overall, Mr. Speaker, over 8,000 vehicle owners benefited from the amnesty, which also, by the way, Mr. Speaker, assisted the DVDL to clean up its register to more accurately reflect the true number of vehicles on our roads. Mr. Speaker, I'd like to now turn my attention to the Department of Commerce and Investment, DCI. Mr. Speaker, another successful year has seen the DCI earn the Top Employer for Medium-Sized Businesses Award from the Cayman Islands Society of Human Resources and Professionals. They were also awarded the prestigious Investors in People's Gold Standard Accreditation for demonstrating world-class practice and operating at the highest levels of people management. Mr. Speaker, I'd like to take this opportunity to commend the DCI team for their remarkable achievements. I'm certain they will continue to embody the very best values of my ministry and the Cayman Islands Civil Service. Mr. Speaker, in 2020-2021, DCI will review the application process for liquor licenses and will make further revisions to the trade and business license law. Amendments to the special economic zone and the local companies control laws have also been envisaged. This Honorable House will recall how this supports one of my key priorities, which is the reduction of red tape for the business community. These changes will be particularly acute for the entrepreneurs in charge of small and medium-sized businesses. I can directly relate to the concerns and difficulties facing these groups, and I am well placed to oversee the necessary changes. Because, Mr. Speaker, how can we expect to improve the quality of our people's lives if we do not also improve how they undertake their businesses? Taking processes online is crucial to this effort, and DCI will implement procedures that will see both the liquor license and the special economic zones applications processes go online. And a new interactive website in the coming months will also form a vital part of this initiative. Members would already know that the trade and business license aspect of DCI are all 100% online. The Department of Commerce and Investment has already proved itself a strong and stable regulator in its newly appointed position as a supervisor of the designated non-financial business and professions, or the DNFBPs. Mr. Speaker, the Honorable Premier has designated efforts to ensure compliance with international standards governing money laundering, terrorist financing, and proliferation financing as a matter of national priority. This is particularly pertinent as the Caribbean Financial Action Task Force, the CFATF, review deadline approaches in early 2020. Mr. Speaker, DCI has taken up the responsibilities of this regulatory mantle with assertiveness, providing outreach sessions for dealers in precious metals and stones, real estate agents and brokers, as well as property developers. Mr. Speaker, the next 2 years will see the implementation of full off- and on-site inspection processes of the DNFBPs to ensure that the highest international standards will be met. I feel sure that I do not need to remind any honorable members in this House about the importance of this undertaking. But, Mr. Speaker, with all of our gains comes challenges. And I must now mention another global threat facing the Cayman Islands, which the National Unity Government is working diligently to mitigate. Mr. Speaker, I'm referring to cyber threats. The government has prioritized cybersecurity and cybercrime and continues to invest in effective measures that provide trust and confidence to our citizens and those who choose to operate their businesses from our jurisdiction. We recognize, Mr. Speaker, that the global cybersecurity and cybercrime challenge is such that we must ensure that our core government infrastructure and critical national infrastructure is resilient to cyber attacks, and we must have a robust and regularly tested capabilities to prevent, detect, respond, and recover in the event of a disruptive cyber attack. Mr. Speaker, to meet these challenges, we have created a Chief Security Information Office under my remit, with a Chief Information Security Officer on board with responsibilities for delivering our cyber strategic intent, as well as supporting statutory authorities and government companies. Mr. Speaker, our government recognizes that the global and evolving nature of cyber threats means that we must continue to collaborate with the United Kingdom and its agencies and our trusted private sector for building a pipeline of cyber competence through our educational institutions. This area, Mr. Speaker, is therefore being given top priority, and as the Honorable Minister of Finance already stated, proper funding has been allocated for information technology upgrades to enhance our cyber security. Mr. Speaker, allied closely to these efforts in the work of the e-Government Department, over the coming 2 years, eGov plans to introduce more online services and enhance existing applications and portals in order to improve customer service. Mr. Speaker, projects in the work includes enhancements to the Scholarship Secretariat's online services, as well as new services for the Health Insurance Commission, the traffic accident reports, and firearm license renewals. The department, Mr. Speaker, will provide and leverage secure interoperability to enhance security of data and aid data controllers to uphold their obligations under the data protection law, while also providing improved services to our customers. Mr. Speaker, security of these online services will be increased by rolling out multi-factor sorry, Mr. Speaker. That's what I need. Authentication for access to the Cayman Islands government online services. I had that one stuck in my throat. Mr. Speaker, eGov also intends to introduce a mobile app which will provide access to a suite of secure, personalized services accessible from your mobile devices. This will facilitate essential everyday tasks such as renewing your driver's and vehicle's licenses, firearm licenses, and obtaining police clearance certificates, amongst other things. Mr. Speaker, the app will also offer a personalized communication channel to citizens, residents, and our customers, where, Mr. Speaker, crucial notifications will be delivered directly to users' mobile phones via notifications. Mr. Speaker, a key benefit of these improvements will be diversifying the channels of government communications for our internal and external stakeholders, which ultimately, Mr. Speaker, will lead to an informed citizenry. Mr. Speaker, the e-Government Department is also working on the introduction of a national e-ID card that can be consolidated with one's elector ID card. It is anticipated that this will be used in conjunction with the voter elector registration and elector ID card issuances. Mr. Speaker, I have already referred to the microscope under which our financial services industry has been placed by the CFATF. Mr. Speaker, imagine the benefits we could offer to that sector for the identification of persons resident in the Cayman Islands via the EID. The efforts of the Computer Services Department, CSD, are also vital to the support and ambitions of our e-government department, Mr. Speaker. And CSD is committed to building and supporting online applications which enable citizens to access government services remotely and easily without the need to stand in line. Essentially, Mr. Speaker, to these goals will be CSD's undertaking to configure and implement technology needed to support the e-government's initiative of providing a one-stop shop for government services. Mr. Speaker, the Computer Services Department will continue to support the Cayman Islands emergency services, security, and safety of life information systems. This is an important pillar in our desire for a stable, effective, and accountable government, Mr. Speaker. The department will also provide a center for excellence for information system analysis, design, sourcing, and integration into the government's information network. However, Mr. Speaker, CSD cannot work in a silo. Collaboration across government is essential in delivering not just CSD's goals, but also the ambitions of each individual entity and of our wider national unity government. In this way, Mr. Speaker, CSD will secure lines of business revenue and leverage economies of scale across the government to deliver efficient technology support to departments and agencies. Finally, Mr. Speaker, the Computer Services Department will continue to work with the Director of Communications in the Cabinet Office to modernize government's information websites. Mr. Speaker, the plan is to deliver phase 1 of the project, a cloud-based website for gov.ky, for testing in January of next year. Phase 2, Mr. Speaker, will involve the delivery of the most used websites during the first quarter of 2020. As a result of the developments, Mr. Speaker, citizens will benefit from having a more efficient repository of information in one central location. This, Mr. Speaker, will eliminate the need for persons to waste time searching for information on multiple websites. Mr. Speaker, I will now draw our attention to the Department of Planning. I've already stressed this evening how important I believe sustainability is to the infrastructure of our islands, Mr. Speaker. And with a record number of projects in the works, the civil servants in the planning department will work to ensure that they strike the right balance to provide customers with an efficient approval process, but also, Mr. Speaker, while ensuring that new developments meet the required high standards we expect here in the Cayman Islands. Mr. Speaker, we are encouraged as we see development continue to grow steadily over the last several years, with marked increases in all of our sectors of the Department of Planning. For example, Mr. Speaker, looking at this year to date compared to 2017, we see the following. Total permits issued, 1,089 versus 879. Total value of permits, $375 million versus $227 million. Certificate of occupancies issued, 360 versus 341. And the certificate of occupancies values at 169 million versus 118 million. The department, Mr. Speaker, carried out 10,378 inspections so far this year versus 9,239 over the same period last year. And for reviews, plan reviews, the department carried out 6,482 plan reviews versus 5,823 over the same period. Mr. Speaker, with this growth, the proposed update to the current building codes will see the Cayman Islands continue to be at the forefront of having the most robust and fit for purpose built infrastructure in the entire region. And by doing so, Mr. Speaker, the planning department will assist in driving employment and in strengthening the important construction sector. This industry is now an essential pillar in ensuring we all continue to benefit from the sustained economic growth the Honorable Finance Minister has presented before us in this budget. Mr. Speaker, furthermore, the department's review and update of Plan Cayman will set a course for the management of development over the next 5 years for Grand Cayman. I am pleased, Mr. Speaker, to report that this review included full public consultation to ensure that we have a plan that works for all in the Cayman Islands. The Ministry is now in receipt of the National Planning Framework and will present the same for Cabinet's consideration in a couple of weeks. Meanwhile, Mr. Speaker, the department has begun preliminary baseline work for the 7 Mile Beach Area Plan in anticipation of the framework being approved. Mr. Speaker, this updated Plan Cayman will ensure that land use decisions work in tandem with the economic, social, and environmental well-being of each and every resident of our islands. Mr. Speaker, this is imperative to provide our islands with the necessary development framework, but it also positions us so we can compete and thrive in the global marketplace while delivering an unparalleled quality of life for all. Mr. Speaker, I want to thank the Honorable Leader of the Opposition for pointing out that it's been over 2 decades that we have not been able to carry out a review of the National Development Plan. So I appreciate his confidence in pointing out that I've actually started to review the plan, and persons will know that our goal is to try and we've divided Grand Cayman up into 5 sections, and we'll do 1 section each year over the next 5 years. Mr. Speaker, perhaps others may have tried to carry out a full-scale plan all at once, but we feel the law calls for a review of the plan every 5 years. And rather than trying to pull off a full-scale plan and failing as we have done over the last several decades, we are going to do 1 section of the island each year over the 5 years, which will complete a full review of the island within 5 years, and then we start the cycle again. So I'm happy to say that we are on schedule with the first section being the 7 Mile Beach Corridor. Mr. Speaker, underlying this daily quality of life that I just spoke of are the endeavors of the Public Works Department, PWD. This department will continue to provide high-quality maintenance support for over 1 million square feet of public facilities. For the 2020-2021 budget cycle, the department will focus on increasing resources to tackle more effectively the removal of sargassum from public beaches, ramps, and jetties. Additionally, Mr. Speaker, you and the members will consider it particularly important that PWD will continue to provide high-quality management services on government's major projects. Some of these under the Major Projects Office, Mr. Speaker, includes the Cruise Terminal Project, the Continued Airports Development Project, the Integrated Solid Waste Management Project, the long-term residential mental health facility, and the John Gray High School, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the Public Works Department will also continue its plans for the Bordentown Church of God, which will serve as a multipurpose hall and a hurricane shelter. The government will engage design consultants by the end of this week to complete the necessary reports on existing structure and required submissions to the Central Planning Authority. Subject to the building control approvals, we anticipate tendering for the completion of the construction works in late January, early February 2020. We might. Mr. Speaker, we have been blessed this year to have so far been spared by the devastation seen by the Bahamas following Hurricane Dorian. Amen. Mr. Speaker, we grieve with our neighbors in this region for their losses. And I commend, again, the leadership and partnership shown by His Excellency the Governor and the Honorable Premier in the rapid deployment of the Royal Cayman Islands Police Service helicopter and its crews to provide concrete support when it was so badly needed by our neighbors. As we still remain under the watchful eye of the 2019 hurricane season, Mr. Speaker, which we all know ends on November 30th, we are still reminded of the important work Public Works Department does when it comes to hurricane preparedness. Mr. Speaker, next year, the department will again carry out the necessary preparations to government facilities and public hurricane shelters to ensure that they are appropriately protected in the event of a tropical storm or a hurricane. Mr. Speaker, PWD is a vital resource in ensuring we maintain our capabilities to respond in the aftermath of a natural disaster or a hurricane. Mr. Speaker, Public Works Department will continue to focus on improved customer service. Significant gains have been achieved in this area over recent years. In fact, Mr. Speaker, in 2019, customers' feedback recorded that 97% of Public Works customers were satisfied with the department's service on maintenance work orders. This was based on feedback of over 1,000 work elements. Mr. Speaker, excellent customer service goes hand in hand with staff training and development. So this will be an important investment for the 2021 budget. This will include an expansion of the Public Works Department's successful vocational training program. Mr. Speaker, as at October of this year, the department completed its most recent cohort of 23 apprentices. These young Caymanian men and women received internationally recognized City and Guild certifications at Public Works Department. 4 of them, Mr. Speaker, completed Level 1 foundations, and 18, Mr. Speaker, completed the Level 2 junior technician. Mr. Speaker, the department is currently arranging job placements for 10 of the Level 2 finishers based on their performance during the program, while three others have moved on to other studies. The other finishers are pursuing other interests, armed with the skills and certifications they have received. Mr. Speaker, you are the father of the house, and so you will understand how momentous an achievement it is to provide quality technical and vocational training for our young people. Public Works, Mr. Speaker, is committed to meeting the training needs of the young Caymanians, as well as the needs of the public and private sector entities working in expanding this lucrative construction industry. We have received specific requests from some private sector companies for Public Works Department to train their staff in specialized areas over the coming months. And this goes both ways, Mr. Speaker, in what is becoming a perfect example of the power and value of the public-private sector partnership. Several top PWD technicians, along with selected personnel from the private sector, have also partnered with the department to receive training and certification so that they can effectively mentor and evaluate participants in the apprenticeship program. Mr. Speaker, I've met many of the current and past cohorts of this apprenticeship program. They make me proud of what my department has achieved, and they give me hope that the future of our islands is in the hands of well-trained and an impressive group of ambitious Caymanians. Mr. Speaker, when we ask the question, who are we building this country for? I say the answer is simple: these young Caymanian men and women. Mr. Speaker, our Honorable Premier earlier noted that the current budget is allowing for the construction of a dedicated apprenticeship training facility at the Public Works compound. We now have the necessary resources for the upgrading of the PWD's electrical, plumbing, air conditioning, and carpentry workshops. Mr. Speaker, this will ensure that they are suitable for apprenticeship training as well as their normal work use. Mr. Speaker, the Public Works Department is on track to complete these projects by December, with a facility opening and a launch of Level 3 supervisory training planned for January 2020. I am pleased our National Unity Government has also provided the funding, Mr. Speaker, for 3 full-time posts: construction instructor, which has been filled, a lab technician, and an administrative officer, which both remain in the recruitment stages. We are on track, Mr. Speaker, for continued expansion of this essential program. Mr. Speaker, by this time next year, the program will have the capacity for up to 50 Caymanian apprenticeships in training, as well as customized classes for persons already working in industry who want to be upskilled or certified in their particular areas of expertise. Mr. Speaker, emerging opportunities within the enlarging construction sector must be secured for future generations of Caymanians. Opportunities such as these provided by the Public Works Department's apprenticeship program will make this realization a very attainable prospect. For its part, Mr. Speaker, the Facilities Management Department, FM, will take on a plethora of tasks alongside its continued effective management of the government administration building. At the heart of these priorities is a proactive manner in which they undertake the management of over 275,000 square feet of government properties. So the building will be usable for the next generation, to which I have already referred. Mr. Speaker, the department will also work to enhance the energy efficiency of our buildings, ensuring that changes are introduced at sustainable rate. Additionally, technology will be used to improve all government properties to create better user experiences. Mr. Speaker, facilities management will also play their part to ensure that government facilities managed by the department are ready for the hurricane season in 2020 and 2021. We must not, Mr. Speaker, rest on our good fortune. It is essential to provide all resources necessary to ensure our people and our assets are sufficiently protected in the event of a natural disaster. Mr. Speaker, the projects and facilities management services will also be provided for the following upcoming projects: the Government Administration Building solar panel system, the electrical vehicle charging stations, the CCTV upgrade, several Government Administration Building agency fit-outs, and several community center upgrades. Mr. Speaker, I'd like to now turn my attention to the Department of Vehicle and Equipment Services, the DVES. The government, Mr. Speaker, will facilitate the completion of Phase 2 of the redevelopment plan, which includes the upgrades of the east and west garage structures and the covering canopy linking both sides. In doing so, Mr. Speaker, the DVES is moving to achieve an increased number of bays and space, which will lead to better turnaround repair times, increased work instability for large vehicles, reduced injury risks, and minimizing employee exposure to the elements. Mr. Speaker, all of this contributes to better overall efficiency and supports government's strategic broad outcome of achieving full employment and ensuring Caymanians benefit from a healthy environment. Mr. Speaker, the new DVES facility, which is set to open this month, will provide the department, Mr. Speaker, with the space to integrate stores, manage fleet services, and employees. The net result, Mr. Speaker, will be improved customer service through improved staff and customer communications. Mr. Speaker, it will also result in better inventory management and control, which will lead to reduced capital expenditure on parts. Mr. Speaker, the improvements to working conditions will be a welcome benefit, enhancing staff productivity and customer experiences. All of these advantages, Mr. Speaker, will contribute to the stable, effective, and accountable government towards which we strive. Additionally, Mr. Speaker, the DVES has at the nucleus of its strategy goals and objectives for 2020-2021 plans to support the national energy policy by ensuring all staff is fully trained, starting in early December, to manage the requirements of the introduction of electric vehicles and equipment on a broader scale. Mr. Speaker, the DVES is committed to helping Caymanians benefit from a healthy environment and our drive for greater sustainability and energy independence. Now, Mr. Speaker, I will turn my attention to a very important agency that I have responsibility for, namely the National Roads Authority, the NRA. Mr. Speaker, the agency hosted at the end of last month its second annual Road Safety Week conference, which was a successful undertaking and sets the tone for the projects ahead. As Honorable Premier already underscored, our government is fully committed, Mr. Speaker, in continuing to invest and improve the road infrastructure on our islands. Mr. Speaker, before I outline some of the road projects that the NRA will work on during the two-year budget terms, it is important to note that revisions to the roads law and the NRA law and regulations as well as revisions to the explosives law will be brought to the House during this term. Mr. Speaker, traffic has been a #1 concern for the residents of Grand Cayman, particularly, Mr. Speaker, for those people who commute from the eastern districts. Mr. Speaker, we understand the difficulties being experienced and are implementing short, medium, and long-term solutions to address this issue. Mr. Speaker, some of the roads infrastructure works currently being undertaken, and also those in the pipeline, includes the continuation of the Godfrey-Nixon Road extension, the completion of the widening of Crew and Shamrock Roads to 3 lanes, the completion of Phase 2 of the Linford-Pearson Highway and Bobby Thompson Way, Phase 1 of the East-West Arterial from Hearst Road going east to Woodland Drive, Phase 2 of the East-West Arterial, that's increasing that to 2 lanes, Phase 2 of the East-West Arterial to Lookout Gardens in Boddentown, and will involve this, Mr. Speaker, will involve an environmental impact assessment to ensure that we comply with the National Conservation Council's directives. And, Mr. Speaker, Phase 1 of the airport connector from Esther-Tibbetts Highway to Sparky Drive. And, Mr. Speaker, I have said on numerous occasions that we have to take a holistic approach to deal with the traffic situation. Our solutions will include, Mr. Speaker, alternative transport, limits on importation of older vehicles, and a comprehensive transportation system. Mr. Speaker, the Honorable Premier has already made mention that my ministry, supported by the Deputy Premier, whose portfolio includes public transport, will commission a mass public transportation study which will guide the choices for a transportation system in the years ahead. Mr. Speaker, in our efforts to improve the roadwork system, the National Roads Authority is currently working on the Complete Streets Initiative, which is aimed at designing roads to accommodate all users, including motorists, cyclists, and pedestrians. Plans, Mr. Speaker, are currently afoot to integrate the design principles along the West Bay Road corridor from Eastern Avenue to Lawrence Boulevard. To support Cayman's new road infrastructure work, Mr. Speaker, work is also being undertaken to incorporate a comprehensive drainage and stormwater management system. Mr. Speaker, as you're aware, infrastructure needs to keep pace with development if we are to maintain current standards and go forward to attract new and revenue-generating activities. Last, but by no means least, Mr. Speaker, I turn to some of our ministerial level projects. You will recall, Mr. Speaker, that last year we announced that one of my prime initiatives was the setting up of a small business development center, commonly referred to as a SBDC, which, Mr. Speaker, intended to provide small and micro businesses with professional business counseling, technical training, and support in gaining access to funding. I am now pleased, Mr. Speaker, to report that a location at the Baytown Plaza, known as the former HSBC building, has been secured for the SBDC. Staff have been hired, and my ministry is actively involved in the pre-launch process. This is fantastic news, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the center will open its doors to clients before the end of this year, and as the Honorable Premier stated, the budget will ensure that we have the necessary resources to expand our outreach during the first quarter of 2020. Mr. Speaker, the Small Business Development Center will collaborate closely with the Cayman Islands Small Business Association, the Chamber of Commerce, and other stakeholders, Mr. Speaker, to ensure appropriate and tailored business development services. Mr. Speaker, these services will complement existing business support which are provided by these stakeholders. And Mr. Speaker, they are intended to be long-term and relationship-based. Mr. Speaker, the services provided will involve programs of development which are anticipated to feed directly into the economic growth. Mr. Speaker, in order to guarantee that we are providing demand-driven services, the SBDC will be administering micro and small business needs assessment surveys in the upcoming weeks. These will inform the scope and design of the SBDC's service. Mr. Speaker, one of the key factors for economic growth and development in our islands is supporting small and micro businesses. And Mr. Speaker, this government, through the ministry, has been proactive in this regard by making it a strategic priority and implementing the necessary policies and programs to achieve this. As you may be aware, honorable members, Mr. Speaker, in 2017, Cabinet extended the Small Business Incentive Program to continue a 2-year reduction in fees for small businesses across the islands. Mr. Speaker, these reductions have been a lifeline for many struggling businesses and an opportunity for many more starting businesses. And since the start of the incentive program, Mr. Speaker, more than 5,000 micro businesses and over 700 small businesses, including contractors, retailers, janitorial services, and many others, have benefited, Mr. Speaker, from the discounts ranging from 50 to 100% on their trade and business licenses. Mr. Speaker, this has cost the government more than $2.8 million since its introduction. But I say, and my government supports me in saying, money well spent. It is this government's intention to support a renewal of this incentive program for a further 2 years at the end of this year, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, just a few months ago, the ministry partnered with the Cayman Islands Small Business Association in the award of the first ever business grants to 10 micro and small business owners. Mr. Speaker, this partnership and the awards of the grants valued up to $5,000 Cayman Islands dollars to each recipient underscores this government's commitment to providing improved access to funding for small businesses. I will continue to encourage other entities, Mr. Speaker, particularly the financial lending institutions, to work alongside the ministry as we seek to foster and promote the creativity, innovation, and entrepreneurial spirits of our Caymanian people. Mr. Speaker, I now move on to the Georgetown Revitalization Initiative. This is another project which falls under my portfolio. Mr. Speaker, it has been taking a multi-pronged holistic approach in revitalizing our town. Programs such as the Saturday Night Live in GT and the Street Food Festival events have been a success, bringing a wide range of patrons of all age groups to the nation's capital. Other events in the works, Mr. Speaker, is a night market and arts festival which will provide positive ways to celebrate the community spirit of Georgetown and our residents and businesses that have given so much to our town. Last year was a time of planning, Mr. Speaker, designing and gathering information that would feed into the revitalization principles of what we term new urbanism and sustainability for our capital. Mr. Speaker, extensive studies have been carried out looking at the best possible solutions for the central business district in Georgetown. These include, Mr. Speaker, the direction of travel for all traffic, building and planning code changes to allow for more mixed-use development along with the pedestrian-friendly designs, and building information modeling, BIM, every street and building infrastructure to effectively give us a platform to do feasibility plans for the town in a realistic and environmentally sensitive manner. Several small to medium-sized projects are now underway and are expected to be completed in 2020. These will include, Mr. Speaker, but not limited to, repaving and redesigning of the Hogstye Bay Observation Park, scheduled to start this month. This is the main area at Hogstye Bay, the waterfront. The Cardinal Avenue and Main Street repaving, sidewalk lighting, and furniture upgrades. Addition of Heroes bus and redesigning of Heroes Square to commence this month, Mr. Speaker. The Central Business District lighting project, and the planting of local mature trees with the aim of greening the streets and our town. These do not include private sector projects that we see very actively happening around the town's capital at the moment. Mr. Speaker, as we move forward, we expect to see the continuation of upgrades to the Hogstye Bay area and selected streets such as Cardinal Avenue, Main Street, and Elgin Avenue and Edward Street. I would like to take this opportunity to thank the committee and headed up by the town manager, Colin, for their hard work and for the progress that we've made this far. And as I said earlier, Mr. Speaker, the last several months since Mr. Lumsden coming on board have been focused on planning and changing regulations to allow things such as mixed use and the identification of areas for possible parking structures. And over the next few months, we will see a lot of these plans turning into action. Mr. Speaker, as it relates to the national energy policy, supporting the use of sustainable energy is a key priority of this government. In July of this year, Mr. Speaker, I announced import duty incentives for clean energy transportation in support of the island's energy policy. The duty waiver applies to electric, hybrid, energy-efficient vehicles, electric motorcycles, and traditional bicycles. Mr. Speaker, we remain optimistic that the position taken by the government to incentivize clean modes of transportation will encourage Caymanians to make choices that are aligned with both local and global sustainability efforts. Mr. Speaker, the ministry continues its work with entities to incorporate renewables, and I am pleased to share that we are working with the National Housing Development Trust to implement the national energy policy recommendations in all of their new built homes, and with the Department of Planning on building code requirements to simplify the process for renewable energy projects. Just last month, Mr. Speaker, my ministry led the inaugural car-free day in the Cayman Islands to encourage effective commuting and sustainable transport. Hundreds of employees of the civil service and the wider public service rallied together and participated in the event, Mr. Speaker. Many persons carpooled, walked, and rode their bicycles to work, including myself, Mr. Speaker, and other members of this honorable House. Just to add, Mr. Speaker, that a survey conducted on our first car-free day revealed that between the Ministries of Commerce, Planning and Infrastructure and District Administration, Tourism and Transport, there was a reduction of cars by 78% on that day. Mr. Speaker, while the ministry targeted employees of the civil and public service for this event, the plan is to invite members of the private sector and the larger general public to participate in 2020. Mr. Speaker, to reflect the commitment of the government to the energy policy, my ministry recently employed an energy policy coordinator who will assist the ministry to deliver the strategic initiatives of the national energy policy. Mr. Speaker, for the Cayman Islands to achieve the targets set out in the national energy policy, it has to be a concerted effort by all stakeholders and from every area of the economy that consumes energy. Mr. Speaker, moving on to another key ministerial project under my portfolio is the National Community Enhancement, the NICE program. Mr. Speaker, the government ran a successful NICE program during the summer this year to help deal with the influx of sargassum washing ashore. With some 486 Caymanians signed up for the project. Registration for the winter season took place today, Mr. Speaker, and workers selected for this biannual event will be tackling repairs and maintenances around the island, as well as the clearing of sargassum if needed. Mr. Speaker, I attended this morning along with the representative from Georgetown Central, and we had over 500 persons show up this morning to register for the event. Mr. Speaker, you counted each person or what? Mr. Speaker, this year, for the first time, the MRCU has joined the project and will be taking on a small team of the NICE workers. In addition, as we make an effort to collaborate with other agencies, the Department of Agriculture and the Agricultural Society will facilitate the use of NICE crews in the preparation activities of the agricultural grounds leading up to the agricultural fair in February 2020. Mr. Speaker, since the start of the project, NICE has ensured that Caymanians benefit from a healthy environment. The ministry will continue to partner with the Public Works Department, the National Roads Authority, the Department of Environmental Health, Workforce Opportunities, Residency, Cayman, and other stakeholders in the public and private sector in delivering the program to help build stronger communities and support the most vulnerable. Mr. Speaker, while the NICE benefits the country on a whole, it also provides an opportunity for Caymanians to learn new skills or gain additional work experiences. So, Mr. Speaker, it is on this basis that the ministry will partner with Inspire Cayman in 2020 to develop and fund a pilot program to identify and train high-performing NICE participants in selected technical and vocational and training programs. Inspire Cayman Training Limited, Mr. Speaker, led by no stranger to us, Mr. Michael Miles, provides accredited vocational and technical career training in construction, automotive, and other areas. Our aim, Mr. Speaker, is to increase the number of skill-based technical and vocational professionals across our islands and also reduce the reliance on the NICE program. Mr. Speaker, we are about impacting the lives of every Caymanian in a meaningful and positive way. In conclusion, Mr. Speaker, I hope you will allow me a moment to thank each member of my team, including those who worked in the agencies and departments that fall under the remit of this ministry. Mr. Speaker, I want to thank them for their dedication, for serving the policies of this government and the people of the Cayman Islands so diligently. I want to thank my colleagues here in the government for their support during our very long budget process as we put together this budget for 2020-2021, as we work together to ensure that we apply our spending to the areas of the nation where it will most affect our people and have long-lasting, sustainable growth for the country. And so I thank my colleagues for their support in supporting this budget that I am presenting this evening, or my goals that I am presenting for this budget. I also want to express, Mr. Speaker, how proud I am of what this government has achieved thus far, and I remain a committed servant of the Caymanian electorate who have trusted me to deliver the safety, security, and economic stability and growth that they so deserve. Mr. Speaker, I am very optimistic as I look to the next 2 budget years and beyond, as we lay the seeds to entrust the safety, security, and prosperity of our islands for the next generation. Mr. Speaker, I thank you, and may God bless you and these Cayman Islands. Thank you very much.
Who the adjournment?
Mr. Speaker, I move the adjournment of this honorable House until 10 a.m. tomorrow morning.
Question is that this Honorable Legislative Assembly do now adjourn until 10 a.m. tomorrow morning. All in favor? Aye. Those against? Aye. The ayes have it. This Honorable Assembly stands now adjourned until 10 a.m. tomorrow morning.